Well, I got a request to do another video. I don't mind doing them for people. I've noticed with the X-Max that a lot of people are getting into RC that have never been into RCs or are getting back into RCs. And a lot of the people that got out of RCs were into gas or nitro because before brushless power, there was only brushed motors. They didn't have a lot of power. They had a good amount of power depending how many turns of wires. That's how many turns on the armature there is. You can go from 4 turns to 55. The more turns, the more torque. The fewer turns, the more amperage it can draw, and the faster it will spin. So more RPMs. But early 2000, late 90s. Brushless technology was quite expensive. Well, now you can get a nice brushless setup for about $200. Like, in two of my vehicles, my rock crawler back here, my rock crawler trail tracker, heavily modified SCX10, got about $2,000 into it. It's running a Mamba Max Pro with a censored motor, brushless. Reason to go censored is it acts like a brush motor, so it won't cog, because with a regular brushless motor, the ESC doesn't know where the rotor is, also called the armature. Well, when you censor it, there's what's called Hall effect sensors that sense the magnetic field, and they know at what position the rotor is in, so it can spin at a slower RPM more efficiently. At first, I had a Castle Sidewinder in my SCX10, and I moved to a Castle Sidewinder with a 3800 kV. I moved to a Mamba Max Pro with a censored Tekin Rock 412 1200 kV. I'm not looking for high RPMs, but it can take up to 4S lipos. The ESC can take up to 6S. The motor can take up to 4S. The ESC, which controls the speed of the motor, basically what the ESC does is it takes the DC power from your batteries and converts it into an alternating current. That's why there's 3 wires. You have a ground and then 2 positives. And depending how fast it's going, there's a frequency of negative, positive, negative, positive, negative, positive, going between. The black is the ground, the white and the red are the wires that the power is sent to very fast back and forth. So if you were to plug 2 wires into a power source like a 9-volt battery, it won't spin. But if you tap them, it will spin, but not efficiently, because you have to get a computer has to do it. That's why we have brushless ESCs. Brushless ESCs most of the time, like a Sidewinder, anything Castle, can also do brushed, except for like the Mamba Monster. I don't know if the Mamba Max Pro can. It's my ESC of choice for 10th scale. For 8th scale, it's Mamba Monster. And of course, for 6th and 5th, you're going to want to go with a Orion, MGM, which MGM is quite expensive, but they're 32-bit. Very fast, what's the word? The ESCs operate very quickly. They can take the information and change it very quickly, coming from the receiver. But we're going to get to batteries now. When you get batteries, you have mainly 2 different types with RC. You have lithium ion, lithium polymer, which is the RCer's battery of choice nowadays. This is a Turnigey Nanotech 180 milliamp hour. It's meant for my 1/24th scale low C short course truck. It's brushless. And then you have nickel metal hydride, and I have larger versions of both of these. You have a 2200 milliamp. 1000 milliamps is 1 amp. So there's 2.2 amps stored in this battery. The C rating, this one is 35C. That's the amount of capacity it can discharge. So that's 35 times 2.2 amps. So that would be a little above 70 amps. I can't do the exact math in my head right now. I really don't feel like it. But this one is a 2600 milliamp hour. These are all 3S. This in my drift car is a 5000 milliamp hour 3S at 40C. So 40 times 5 would be 200 amps. But it has a burst rating of 50C, so 250 amps. But also, with a LiPo battery, you are going to have a charging rate. Most are 1C. You can only charge it at its capacity, 5 amps. A 5000 milliamp hour battery, there's 5 amps stored in it. You want to charge it at 5 amps. With this Turnigy Nanotech, I can actually charge it at 3C. So that is 3 times its capacity. So 3 times 180. So that would give me 440 milliamps. So 0.44 amps. But most chargers don't come with that. Here I have several different chargers. Here's a Dynamite that came with my low C short course truck. This is just a 20 watt. This can only do up to 2 amps. This is my very first good charger. This is a 30 watt. This can only do up to 3 amps. You can change it by hitting this button and then holding it down. And then it gives you, if anything goes wrong, certain light combinations will come on, and then you have to look them up and you'll see, okay, what's the problem? Also, with LiPos, with Phantom, if you go to look at a DJI Phantom, its battery looks like this. There's just 2 plugs, power. The charger is built into this. This is a smart battery. A regular LiPo, I'm going to take one out of my X-Max. This is a 7500 milliamp at 30C. But 50C burst rating, so that is 225 amp continuous discharge and a 375 burst discharge. Let's see, charge rate 1C. So I would want to charge this. The max I have is 6 amps, but this can be charged up to 7.5 amps per hour. You don't want to go over that because there's a possibility you can damage your battery. And also, one thing with LiPos is you want to get a LiPo bag, because LiPos, I'm sure everybody has seen on the news, on the internet, LiPo boards catching, those hoverboards catching fire or exploding. They have lithium polymer batteries in them. They're a relatively new technology. But if you look at a LiPo, you have these JST/XH plugs. There is 1 wire for each cell, and then the ground wire. Well, when I got my, I got 2 of these Venom batteries in, and one was completely balanced, and one, when I charged it up, it was reading 4.2. I'm having to get to something in my bag. I've got a lot of stuff. I'm going over everything battery, so everything battery, everything electronic and electric motor. You have two different types of voltage meters. This simply tells you how many volts are still left in your battery. This is a 3S also. As you see, I'm not going to do a close-up, but there's a red, a blue, and a yellow wire, and then black for ground. I plug it in, and it will tell me 3 cell, all combined 12.5, number 1 4.18, number 2 4.18, number 3 4.19. That is acceptable. You do not want batteries to be out, each cell, you don't want them to be more than from 0.03 to 0.05 volts away from each other. When I got my dual 7500 milliamp from Venom, Atomic RC makes these. They also make the bias batteries, which is in my drift car. Bias batteries have a higher discharge rate because usually they're made for helicopters. That's why it comes with this this voltage indicator. What you do is you plug this in, and while you're running your helicopter, you can set a low voltage warning. So once it gets down to a certain voltage, it will start making the beep that you heard when I plugged in. It will continue making that until you unplug, once you land and unplug it, to let you know, okay, you can set it from, let me look to remember, from 2.7, which I don't go, it's with lipos, you don't want to go below 3 volts per cell, and even that is low. You really don't want to go below 3.2. With phantom batteries, it actually doesn't let you go below 10%. These are 4S batteries, meaning 4 cells. When it comes to other chargers, you have digital chargers. This is a Team Tenergy, and this is a SkyRC IMAX B6 AC. This can do lipo, nylon, life, nickel metal hydride, NiCad, and PB, which is lead acid, which is what you find in your car. You don't want to do this to charge a car battery. Maybe a motorcycle battery or a small battery like that, but not a car battery. There's just too much amperage in them. They have discharge currents. If you've ever heard of cold cranking amps, that's how many amps it can put out at freezing. So in Fahrenheit, 32 degrees, Celsius, 0 degrees. But this, when you're charging it, you have to, I'll do another video. Well, I've done videos of both of these plugged in and using them, but it lets you know how many milliamps have been pumped into the battery. Most of the time, batteries are underrated a little bit. Like this bias in my HPI RS4 Sport 3 Drift, it comes with a brushed motor, but I put a Castle setup in it, Mamba Max Pro 3800 kV motor, and a Lipo 3S battery. Okay, where the hell was I going with this? Shit. I lost my train of thought there. But this is a 3S, 5,000 milliamp hour. In my touring car, I am running a Castle Sidewinder. You can actually see with this, the differentials are actually functioning. The rear is a little tighter than the front. But in my drift car, all 4 wheels are locked together. You want that for drifting, so one wheel won't spin faster than the other. But with these digital, oh yeah, I know what I was saying. Like this bias, when I completely discharged it to 3 volts per cell, and I recharged it, it actually recharged to 5,280 some odd milliamps. So it's actually more than 5,000 milliamps. It was 5.281. I don't remember exactly down to the exact milliamp, but it gives you a readout of how many cells, how long it's been, the input voltage, the current voltage, and the milliamps that have been put into it. Milliamps, you got to remember, 1,000 milliamps is 1 amp. So a 1,000 milliamp hour battery is a 1 amp battery. A 1,500 is a 1.5 amp battery. A 2,000 is a 2 amp battery. A 2,200 is a 2.2 amp battery. A 2,600, like I have right here, is 2.6 amps. And both of my on-road cars. This is my drift car. No, this is my drift car. This is my touring car. This is a 2S battery. The fewer amount of cells, the smaller the battery. Like, this is the 5,000 milliamp 2S battery. It's smaller than the 3S 5,000 milliamp hour battery. The reason for that is each cell has to be able to carry 5,000 milliamp hours. But that's basically how to charge them. To charge, you go off its capacity, which is how many milliamps it is. Be it, like this is one of my flight batteries. This is a 1,300 milliamp hour battery. I would charge it at 1.3 amps unless it has a higher charge rate. Let's see if this says. This has a 1.5C maximum charge rate. So I can charge this at 2,000. I'm having to do some math in my head real quick. 2,050 milliamp hours because it has a 1.5 charge rate. These Admirals just have a 1C charge rate, so I have to charge them at 2.6 amps. My 5,000 milliamp hours, this is a Racer's Edge battery. If I remember correctly, it is a 2C. So I can charge this one at 2 amps. Let me look. It doesn't say on the front. I doubt it says on the back. But usually if you have a battery, you can look online and it will tell you what the charge rate is. People sometimes ask me, why do I braid the wires from my ESC to my motor? The reason I do that is if you braid the wires, that gives off less interference to the receiver. That was mainly when they were using 27 megahertz receivers. There was a lot of interference. Well, now 2.4 gigahertz and 5.8 gigahertz, there's barely any interference, and especially with transmitters like today, like my Fly Sky here, it actually has what's called AFHDS. It's pretty damn small. Automatic frequency hopping digital system. So what it does is, in the 2.4 gigahertz range, it hops from different frequencies in that range. So that's why multiple people can use, 10, 20 people can use 2.4 gigahertz and it not affect. Back in the days when they used 27 megahertz, you would have to change out crystals. Like I have three minis. 2 are brushless and 1 is brushed. The one that is brushed uses crystals. With 27 megahertz, it stays on that 27 megahertz. It stays on one frequency. So each person would have to have a different crystal. With the little receiver that comes in mine, is a receiver ESC combo, which is normal for very small vehicles to make everything compact. You would have to change out the crystal. It goes 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. There's 6 separate crystals. Well, in mine, there is number 1 crystal. Well, if someone else wanted to race with me, they'd have to get a crystal other than number 1, because if he or she didn't, we would be controlling each other's vehicles. But back to chargers, basically, you also have nickel metal hydride. These are the ones that I use for my starters for my nitros. I don't use nickel metal hydride in my vehicles because as the voltage goes down there, you really notice a loss in power. So with Lipo, seeing that there's 3 cells, each cell loses power instead of the entire battery. So the loss in power isn't as noticeable. It's there, but it's not as noticeable. So I'm going to put this back together real quick. It doesn't take long at all. Just plug it in. This has Tamiya connectors on it. There's many different connectors when it comes to batteries. I prefer XT60. It's what I started with. It's what I love to this day. I've never had a problem with them. I even use them on my X-Max. XT60s are only rated for 60 amps. Well, I know that it can take more than that because they have more surface area than the Traxxas plug. Less restriction, only like 0.25 ohms, if that, when I tested it last time. But their XT60, 60 meaning it can take a constant 60 amps running through it. Well, I'm running 80 amps continuous and up to 300 amps bursts. So, but they also make XT90s that can take 90 amps continuously, and they have a built-in sparker circuit, which, if you notice when you plug in your X-Max batteries, when you plug one in and then plug the second one in, there's a spark. That's because you are running 25.2 volts, I believe it is. Yeah, 25.2 volts. So there's quite a bit of power there. There's a lot of volts. These batteries can kill you. It only takes 80 milliamps to stop the human heart. So that's a little bit of information about how powerful these batteries are. And back to the voltage meters, there's several different. My SkyRC IMAX B6AC has a battery meter, a battery ohm meter, which lets me know the resistance of the battery circuit, each cell. Like one of these is 3 ohms, and 5 ohms. Every cell has a different, you want them to be as closely matched as possible. But if they are not balanced, meaning if you charge them and 2 cells are at 4.2, which is the max for a LiPo battery cell, the DJI Phantom batteries, each cell can go up to, I've noticed, 4.25. I don't know why DJI allows it to go higher than that, but I just go with it. But like this battery this right here, I'm going to plug a 3S battery into it. S standing for how many cells. And it says 4.16, 4.16, 4.17. Well, this has a balance feature where it will balance each cell to the same voltage. And you can actually discharge using this. It gets warm because basically how it discharges is it puts the electricity through a transistor. The transistor gets hot because virtually what a transistor is it creates resistance in a circuit. There's a lot of terminology when it comes to electronics. You have to remember volts, watts, amperage, and ohms. Those are the 4 main that you need to learn. But I'll plug in my IMAX battery, and maybe you'll hear the pop when I plug it back in of the power. There's regular plugs that you just have a negative and a positive, and it goes straight into it. You have parallel and you have series. Parallel will take two batteries, just say these are both 2600 milliamp hours. If you put them together, what it will do is, if these are 30C, it will give you 60C, and it will also take the capacity and combine them. So two 2600 milliamp hour batteries will give you 5200 milliamp hours. That's how parallel works. But with the iMax, it's series. You use two 3S batteries to create 6S. It's running on 6 cells, 25.2 volts. Basically, it runs in a circuit. It goes from the positive lead of the battery, and then the negative lead comes out, and then goes to the positive lead of the other battery, and then the negative lead goes back into the ESC. Well, most of the current is drawn from the positive side. When I was first running my XMAX, I had my battery out of my bias, which is a 40C, and my Venom, which is a 35C. I ran the 35C on one side, on the positive side, and the 40C on the negative side. Well, seeing that most of the power is pulled from the positive side, the 35C got drained a lot faster than the 40C, but if I run the 40C battery, it sort of works as a, what should I call it? It sort of works as a limiter. It makes it so the 35C doesn't over discharge. So they discharge at about the same rate. They have series plugs, parallel plugs. You can make your own. I make my own because, hell, if you learn to do something, you can continue doing it, and you don't have to take it to a shop to have someone else do it. I always learned how to do things on my own. I'm not meaning to toot my own horn, but I'm very good at learning, and I've always learned how to work on my own RCs from the very beginning, even with my drones and quadcopters, like my Phantom right here. This is a Phantom 3 standard. I didn't need the Pro. All the Pro does is it gives you a little camera that points down. So these have GPS technology, so if you let go of the controller sticks, like this is the transmitter for it. If you let go of these sticks, it will hover in one spot. But there's also a mode called attitude mode, which just keeps it flat in the air, but it won't keep its it won't hold its altitude. It will wander altitude, and it will also wander in the sky. Like if wind is coming from this way, it will push the drone. But with GPS, this is rated up to 25 miles per hour, so it will actually fight against the wind. But it has what's called a gimbal. It keeps the camera level and steady, so no matter what the drone does, I'll turn it on so you can see it. You see it calibrating, it calibrates itself right there, and then as you see, as I turn the drone, the gimbal keeps it's a brushless gimbal. It keeps the camera completely steady, so no matter what the drone does, you get a constant level picture. Video, it sends back video. This one works on Wi-Fi and it has Wi-Fi boosters built into the controller. As you can see, it actually says do not cover antenna inside. There's two boosters right inside. I've taken this apart. I know what's inside of it. I basically reverse engineer everything I have. Where are we at time-wise? Okay, it's getting pretty long now. But that's charging batteries, the electrical system of your electric vehicle, all the different things that you have to learn. You also, like these two, are simply nickel metal hydride battery chargers. This one automatically starts charging as soon as you plug it in. There's no buttons. Up to 2 amps. This one you have to actually set how many amps. This does 2 or 3S. This charger does up to 5 amps. Up to a 6S battery. You can actually see here is the balance board. It does 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6S batteries. And then my iMax B6AC does up to 6 amps, and that balance board is actually built into the charger. The 2 digitals can do LiPo, Nylon, Life, nickel metal hydride, NiCad, and PB, which is lead acid, car batteries. But I stick with LiPos. Those are the batteries I have always dealt with. Those and nickel metal hydride. I've always preferred LiPo because the power is more constant than a nickel metal hydride. It's all preference. And also nickel metal hydride are more expensive. LiPos are more expensive than nickel metal hydride. So you also have to put that into account. That's pretty much it for this video. If anybody has any questions, comment in the section below. I always answer questions. Of course, people are going to hate. That's always... people always act that way for some reason. They just can't be civilized. If you don't like the video, move on to the next fucking video. And lastly, I'm going to plug my X-Max in and show you. I'm actually going to turn the lights out, and maybe you can actually see the spark. And lights are going out now. And then right here is you'll hear it. You hear that little pop? And once you plug it in, it's there. It's ready to run. You can turn it on. And now it's on.